What if one simple act of kindness could change a billionaire's entire legacy? Imagine this. A crumpled $5 bill slides across the table and stops in front of her, like a challenge no one had spoken out loud. The rain is pounding against the windows of the nearly empty diner when Naomi Brooks, a black waitress nearing the end of another brutal double shift, looks down at the man sitting alone in booth 6. He smells of wet wool and cold nights, his hands shaking as he wraps them around a chipped coffee mug. To everyone else, he's just another homeless old man who wandered in too late and asked for too little. But something in his eyes makes Naomi pause. The diner manager had already tried to throw him out. Naomi steps in without thinking, offering him soup, bread, and a seat by the heater on her own tab. She doesn't know that the man hunched over that bowl is actually Henry Callaway, a reclusive billionaire, disguising himself as a beggar, searching for proof that humanity still exists beyond boardrooms and inheritance lawyers. When Henry finishes eating, he stands slowly and leaves a single $5 bill on the table. For Naomi, $5 means bus fare. It means part of her rent. It means medicine for her young daughter. The room seems to hold its breath as she picks it up, and then presses it gently back into his palm. "I can't take this," she says quietly. "In my space, guests don't pay for kindness." But here's the question that will shock you. What if that homeless man wasn't homeless at all? That sentence lands harder than any business loss Henry has ever faced. He has spent a lifetime surrounded by greed, especially from his own children, Marcus and Alina Callaway, who are already circling his fortune like vultures. In that worn-down diner, soaked by rain and stripped of status, Henry finds what money has never bought him: dignity freely given. And in that moment, with only $5 between them, the fate of a billion-dollar empire quietly changes forever. By the time Henry Callaway steps back into the rain, the $5 bill still warm in his palm, something inside him has already cracked. For decades, Henry has ruled from the top of glass towers and private jets, feared in boardrooms, obeyed without question. His empire is worth billions, but his world has grown painfully small. Just 1 week earlier, a doctor with careful eyes and a steady voice gives him the truth. No fortune can negotiate stage 4 cancer. Months, not years. The clock is no longer theoretical. When Henry tells his children, their reactions confirm what he has long suspected, but refused to face. Marcus immediately asks about controlling shares. Alina wants reassurance that the trusts are protected. Neither asks how much time he has left. Neither asks how he feels. In that moment, Henry understands with terrifying clarity. His legacy will not be carried forward by love, but consumed by greed. That night's sleep never comes. Instead, an idea forms, dangerous, simple, and final. If blood cannot be trusted, perhaps character can. Henry decides to test the world the way the world tests the powerless. He strips himself of status, wraps his body in rags, and steps into places where his name means nothing. The results are brutal. Luxury hotels turn him away without eye contact. Fine restaurants escort him out as if he were contagious. Security guards shove him into the rain, while patrons pretend not to see. In every polished space built by money, humanity vanishes the moment dignity can't pay for entry. By the 5th rejection, Henry feels something close to despair, not because of how he is treated, but because it is consistent, predictable, cold. Then comes the diner. Inside that flickering, grease-stained room, no one knows who he is. And yet, Naomi Brooks sees him. She doesn't ask what he can offer. She doesn't flinch at his smell or his clothes. She doesn't perform kindness for applause. She simply acts, quietly, instinctively, at personal cost. As Henry replays her words, "Guests don't pay for kindness," they echo louder than any speech he has ever given. Naomi has less than nothing, yet she gives him dignity without hesitation. Not because it benefits her, but because it is right. Standing in the alley where his driver waits in silence, Henry straightens his spine. The test is over. He hasn't found an heir in his bloodline. He has found one in a woman who treated a stranger like a human being when no one was watching. And that realization will soon shake his empire far more violently than his death ever could. The truth Henry Callaway can no longer ignore is this: the people closest to him have never truly been close at all. For years, he has excused it as ambition. He told himself that Marcus and Alina are sharp because the world is sharp, ruthless because success demands it. He has rewarded their cold efficiency, funded their excesses, silenced their failures with money. In doing so, he has trained them well, just not as human beings. Now, facing the end, the illusion collapses. When Henry lies awake at night, it isn't fear of death that haunts him. It is the certainty that everything he built will become fuel for people who have never built anything themselves. His children don't see a lifetime of work. They see leverage, control, entitlement. Even in his sickness, they hover like accountants over a balance sheet, waiting for the final number. Henry realizes something bitter and liberating at the same time. Legacy is not inherited. It is earned. Naomi Brooks has earned something his children never have. She doesn't know his name. She doesn't know his wealth. She doesn't even know if he will ever come back. Yet she treats him with a dignity that costs her more than money. It costs her security. She gives while standing on the edge of losing everything herself. That kind of character can't be taught in business school or purchased with trust funds. As the city lights blur past the tinted windows of his car, Henry feels an unfamiliar clarity. For the first time in decades, he isn't calculating risk. He isn't protecting assets. He is choosing meaning. He thinks of Naomi's tired eyes, her steady voice, the way she speaks about her daughter, not with bitterness, but with quiet hope. He thinks of how naturally she takes responsibility for a stranger's comfort, not because it is expected, but because it is human. That is the kind of person his empire should belong to, not someone who would exploit it, but someone who would protect others with it. Henry knows what will follow. Outrage, lawsuits, public humiliation, accusations of insanity. His children will call him cruel. The media will call him reckless. Lawyers will warn him of consequences, but none of that matters anymore. Because in a rain-soaked diner, stripped of power and identity, Henry has finally seen the truth. A fortune left to the wrong hands is a curse. A fortune placed in the right heart is a second chance. And for the first time since his diagnosis, Henry Callaway feels at peace, not because he is dying, but because he finally knows who deserves to live on through what he leaves behind. Henry Callaway does not make the decision lightly, but once it is made, it settles into him with the weight of truth. Back in his penthouse, surrounded by marble floors and quiet that money has bought but never softened, Henry replays the night again and again. Naomi Brooks, standing under harsh fluorescent lights, exhaustion carved into her posture. The way she speaks of her daughter, not asking for sympathy, not begging for help, just stating facts, and still choosing kindness. She hadn't known she was being watched. That is what matters most. He summons his attorney before dawn. The man arrives with legal pads and cautious eyes, already sensing the storm. "Arthur," Henry corrects himself. "Are you certain about this direction?" Henry doesn't hesitate. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." They go over the details slowly. Trust structures, blind timelines, safeguards, everything designed to protect Naomi from what will inevitably come next. Because Henry is not naive. He knows his children will not accept this quietly. Marcus will threaten. Alina will manipulate. They will call Naomi a gold digger, accuse her of manipulation, drag her past into headlines and courtrooms. That is why Henry insists on secrecy. Naomi will not know, not yet. The fortune will be sealed, the beneficiary unnamed until after his death. Let the vultures believe they have one. Let them expose themselves fully. As the pen hovers over the final page, Henry pauses, not from doubt but from reflection. He thinks about what Naomi would do if she suddenly had power. Not the extravagance she might buy, but the dignity she would restore. He imagines her daughter never again counting inhalers or eviction notices. He imagines employees treated as people, not numbers. He imagines an empire that no longer crushes those beneath it. "That waitress," Henry says quietly, "has more integrity than every boardroom I've ever sat in." The pen touches paper. In that moment, Henry Callaway does something radical. He rejects blood in favor of character. He chooses humanity over legacy, as it is traditionally defined. And for the first time since his diagnosis, the fear loosens its grip. Because death no longer feels like an ending, it feels like a correction. Far across the city, Naomi Brooks wipes down her counter at the diner, unaware that her quiet act of decency has just rewritten the future of an empire. She worries about rent, about her daughter's school, about whether tomorrow's tips will be enough. She has no idea that her kindness, given freely without witnesses, has crossed a line no amount of money ever could. And soon, whether the world is ready or not, that kindness will be tested in ways far greater than a $5 bill. The conflict arrives exactly as Henry Callaway has predicted, swift, vicious, and dressed in silk. Within days of rewriting his will, the tone inside his home changes. Phone calls go unanswered. Invitations are suddenly misplaced. Marcus stops pretending concern altogether, his voice turning sharp and transactional whenever they speak. Alina oscillates between icy politeness and thinly veiled rage, probing Henry with questions that aren't really questions at all, about doctors' medications, mental clarity. "People are starting to worry about you," she says one afternoon, her smile too tight to be sincere. Running around the city dressed like a homeless man isn't exactly reassuring to the board. Henry hears the threat beneath the concern. Soon the pressure intensifies. Lawyers begin using careful language. Advisors suggest reevaluations. A psychiatrist is recommended, then insisted upon. It is framed as care, but Henry recognizes it for what it is. An attempt to reclaim control, to undermine his competence before it is too late. They don't know he has already moved 3 steps ahead. Late one night, as rain traces slow lines down the penthouse windows, Henry sits across from his attorney. The documents spread between them like a battlefield map. "They'll come for her," the attorney says quietly. "If they can't undo the will, they'll discredit the beneficiary." Henry nods. That's why the trust is sealed. That's why she won't know yet. He leans back, coughing hard into a handkerchief, then steadies himself. "My children understand power. They don't understand restraint. They'll reveal themselves." And they do. Private investigators are hired. Dirt is sought where none exists. Whispers begin. A waitress, undue influence, manipulation. All of it carefully planted. All of it designed to prepare the ground for war. Meanwhile, Naomi Brooks lives her life, unaware of the storm gathering around her name. She wipes counters, counts tips, walks her daughter to school with the same quiet determination as always. She has no idea her kindness is being discussed in legal offices and private dining rooms by people who have never once shown any themselves. Henry watches it all unfold with grim clarity. This is the cost of choosing right over easy. One evening, after Marcus storms out of a meeting and Alina threatens to take this public, Henry finally speaks the words he has been holding back for years. "You don't deserve what I built," he says calmly, "and you never did." The silence that follows is electric. They leave furious. Henry is left alone, but for the first time not lonely. Because even as his strength fades, his resolve does not. He has drawn the line. And no matter how violently the world pushes back, he knows this much is unshakable. Kindness has challenged power, and power is afraid. The moment arrives, not with thunder, but with silence so heavy it presses against every breath in the room. The reading of the will takes place in Henry Callaway's private library, walls lined with books no one in his family has ever read. Sunlight filters through tall windows like a final witness. Marcus sits rigid, jaw tight. Alina paces, heels clicking in sharp, impatient rhythms. They are not mourning. They are waiting to collect. Henry's attorney clears his throat and begins. At first, the words are harmless formalities, acknowledgments, small personal items. Marcus relaxes, exchanging a quick glance with his sister. This is going exactly as expected. Then, everything changes. "To my son Marcus," the attorney reads evenly, "I leave my collection of cufflinks and no controlling interest, no cash assets, and no authority within Sterling Holdings." Marcus laughs once, sharp, disbelieving. "That's not funny." The attorney doesn't look up. "To my daughter, Alina," he continues, I leave the portrait of her mother in the hope it may remind her of the compassion she never learned to practice. I leave no equity, no cash assets, and no authority. Alina's face drains of color. "This is insane," she whispers. "He was sick, this can't be legal." The attorney turns the page. "The remainder of my estate, my company's properties and assets, is bequeathed in full to a single beneficiary." Both siblings lean forward. "Who?" Marcus demands. The room seems to contract as the attorney speaks the name. "Naomi Brooks." The silence shatters. "A waitress," Alina screams. "You're saying he gave everything to a waitress?" "Yes," the attorney replies calmly. "Effective immediately." Rage explodes. Threats, accusations, vows of lawsuits. But none of it matters. Henry has anticipated every move, locked every door, sealed every crack. The will is airtight. The truth is unavoidable. Miles away, under flickering diner lights, Naomi Brooks is scraping plates, unaware that her life has just split into a before and an after. She still worries about rent, still counts tips, still plans tomorrow's shift. When the black car finally pulls up outside the diner, and a man in a tailored suit asks for her by name, Naomi feels only fear, not excitement, not hope. She has no idea that a $5 bill she never accepted has just returned to her as an empire. And in that moment, when kindness collides with power, the world tilts, reminding everyone watching that sometimes the greatest turning points don't come from ambition or force, but from a quiet choice to treat a stranger like a human being. Naomi Brooks doesn't feel rich when she steps out of the diner that night. She feels terrified. The black car waits quietly at the curb, rain misting the pavement, like the world itself is holding its breath. When the lawyer finally explains who Henry Callaway really is, and what he has left her, Naomi's knees nearly give out. An empire, billions, power she has never asked for and never imagined. Her first thought isn't excitement. It is her daughter, safety, responsibility. Henry's children scream betrayal. The media screams scandal. Boardrooms tremble. But Naomi doesn't scream at all. She stands still, clutching her daughter's hand, remembering the cold man who needed soup more than status. She understands then what Henry has seen. Wealth doesn't reveal character. It tests it. And kindness, when given freely, has a way of outliving power. Naomi doesn't become what the world expects a billionaire to be. She becomes what the world rarely sees. Someone who remembers where she came from. She pays debts quietly, protects workers loudly, turns empty buildings into shelters. And every Tuesday night, she and her daughter sit in a modest kitchen, sharing soup, just like before. Henry Callaway built an empire with money. Naomi Brooks rebuilt it with humanity. This story, here on Taleverse Studio, teaches us something profound. You never know who is watching the way you treat people when there is nothing to gain. True character isn't revealed in moments of reward, but in moments of choice. Kindness given without expectation is never wasted. It travels, it echoes, it changes lives, including your own. Now we want to hear from you. If you were Naomi, what would you have done? Would you have given back the